This week on the Auto Riff, we take an abbreviated look at the history of the Dodge Power Wagon. Sit back, buckle up, and thank you for listening to the Auto Riff. This week we are talking about a truck that got its start in the military. But we aren't talking about a Jeep or a Hummer. We are learning about the Dodge Power Wagon and how it went from a military truck to civilian truck and where the nameplate has gone through the years. I just want to start off saying I do have a little bit of a past, you can say, with the Dodge Power Wagon. My dad had a 1979 Power Wagon. It was some kind of gross yellow and had a brown and black stripe on both sides of the bed, which I think was probably popular in the 70s. I basically learned how to drive in that truck, and when I was little, my dad worked at a lumberyard, and when that lumberyard closed, the owner would have my dad come by and fix up the forklifts in order to sell them. But while he did that, I got to drive the truck around the lumberyard. I couldn't have been more than 8 years old, and one of my memories was that when we pulled into the driveway of the lumberyard, my dad would let me switch with him, and I had to slide all the way forward on the seat to reach the gas pedal. And when it was time to brake, I had no sense of brake pressure, and I would just slam the pedal all the way down, causing my dad to almost hit the dash with his head, and he would always come up laughing every time we went. As I got older, whenever my ATV would break down, my dad would let me drive the Power Wagon around a field that we had across the street from us. He barely drove it at that point, and whenever he did, he would famously put $5 in gas in it just to get around for the day before parking it in the lot beside our house for several more weeks. When I was 15 and had my learner's permit, my dad would let me drive it to the gas station with him. And all I remember was sweating bullets, not just because of the lack of air conditioning in the Florida heat, but because it probably had to me it seemed like at the time, about a half a turn of play in the steering. And I was having such a hard time keeping it between the lines because you always seemed to be overcorrecting it. My dad ended up selling it a little while after that, but when I think of the times I had in that truck, it always makes me smile. But you didn't come here to listen to me talk about my childhood. The Dodge Power Wagon was derived from a truck that the military used called a carryall, I believe is what it was called. The Dodge trucks were known for their dependability, and after World War II, many sought them from the factory. The original Power Wagon used primarily parts that Dodge already had laying around from other models. There wasn't much new about it. The Power Wagon was initially unveiled in 1946 as the farm utility truck, and then when it actually hit showrooms, it was called the Power Wagon. That model was released with a 230 cubic inch 6-cylinder engine that, as far as I could find, produced about 94 horsepower, which is a heck of a step forward from the 2 horsepower in the Benz patent motor wagon that we talked about last week. But most people love that engine for its reliability. There was apparently an 8-cylinder motor, not for the Power Wagon, but that Dodge had. It was also a similar design, but most people preferred the 6-cylinder because of the gas mileage, I believe is what I read. Power Wagon was actually exported also as Fargo and DeSoto branded vehicles. The Power Wagon holds the distinction of being the first mass-produced 4x4 pickup and beat the Jeep Willys pickup to the market by just over a year. The Power Wagon was produced until 1980 before being replaced by the Ram naming in 1981. In all the research I was doing on the Power Wagon nameplate, most all I saw was on the original body style and how it evolved until the early 70s. It had a couple new engines, but mostly it was still a 6-cylinder. It went up to, I think it was 254 cubic inches or something like that, and the power was maybe 120. But I knew my dad had a 79, and I couldn't find any information on it, so I had to look up specifically 1979 Power Wagon. So I did a little research, and the 79 was part of what was called Dodge's Macho lineup, and it was available in a couple body configurations. There was a step side, a swept side, which is a more traditional, just regular flat body style, a crew cab, and a club cab. And they were available with 3 different motors. There was a 3.7 liter slant 6, a 5.2 liter or 318 cubic inch V8, and a 5.9 liter or 360 cubic inch V8 as well, which I believe topped out at like 125 horsepower. I seem to remember my dad's having a 318 in it, but I know he got, I believe it was a 360 out of like a wrecked station wagon and put it in later on. I remember the station wagon being in the driveway, and that I remember the engine coming out of that, and I remember going into the pickup. The Power Wagon name does live on today as an off-road variant of the 2500 model with the Ram, which is fitting because the original Power Wagon was considered to be like the first version of the 2500, because most all of them were 1 tons at the time. The Power Wagon name has a long history, and all of them, in my opinion, are beautiful trucks. If you have a chance to Google the Power Wagon and look at them, they're all super nice looking trucks, I think. Thank you for listening to the second episode of The Auto Riff. Next week, we will be profiling the Oldsmobile Toronado. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions or stories to share, please email me at theautoriff@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. All sources will be in the description of the episode, as well as links to the social media. Thanks for giving me some more time this week. Please buckle up and drive safely, and have a great week.